Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Receiving Noor weekly Quran class. We are studying Surah 76, Al-Insan, the human being. This is our second session. And as usual, Sister Yamina will be leading us in tonight's study. And you're welcome to join in with your comments and questions. Before we start, in this second session of Surah Insan, I'd like to very briefly highlight some of the things that we talked about last time. Last time we looked at the first couple verses of Surah 76. I can actually remind them to us. Has there not been a period of time when the human being was nothing to even be mentioned? Truly, it's we who have created the human being out of a drop of fluid intermingled, so that we might try him. And therefore we made him hearing and seeing. Truly, we have guided him to the way, either grateful or ungrateful. And we especially focused on these first couple verses, and then we also read 4, 5, and 6. Behold, we have prepared for the ungrateful, disbelievers, kafir, chains and shackles, and the blazing fire. And then we also turn to the next verse saying, whereas behold, the truly righteous shall drink from a cup flavored with the calyx of sweet-smelling flowers. So basically, the verses, we talked a lot about different things. But one thing, a couple of things that I want to highlight is one of the humility that the surah opened up with, reminding us that there has been a long, endless period of time where we weren't even something to be mentioned of. We did not exist, and that not existing for so long reminds us, gives us humility, and that humility is not a fake humility, in the sense that we're not pretending to bring ourselves down to look humble. It's really a genuine, truthful understanding of how limited and how dependent we are, and we are nothing without being given existence. We don't have our own existence on our own, and there has been a long time we were nothing. We weren't even something to be mentioned of. And then another thing we highlighted last time was the capacity of hearing and seeing. After having started with reminding us our humble beginnings, the verse, the Quran, our Creator, calls us to see how, starting from this fluid, we're shaped, and we're given this capacity to hear and see. And these are ways in which we perceive the world, the way in which we think about the world around us. And that is an incredible capacity, which also brings us responsibility. And we noted that we oftentimes think of responsibility as something negative, but actually it is something noteworthy and something precious, being given the capacity to think, to understand, to perceive, to hear. And then with that, the responsibility comes, and that responsibility actually is an honor. And the key responsibility here is gratitude versus being ungrateful. That's the key existential decision before us. And it's very interesting that, in a way, last time we mentioned that in a way it's very easy. It's all about gratitude and awareness. So it's not a tough task. It's very in line with our nature. And it's easy just to be grateful, to be honest and grateful to the source that is taking care of us and giving us existence. And then resisting to that gratitude takes us into suffering in this world and the next. So these are some of the things I wanted to highlight from last class. Is there anybody else who wants to jump in or to say anything from last class? Okay, so if not, then we turn to Sister Yamina to lead us in tonight's session. Jazakallah khair. Bismillah.
Thank you, Isra. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So as Isra just reminded us, we stopped at Ayah 4 of Surah Insan, Surah 76, where we are told that, behold, we have prepared for the ungrateful disbelievers, the kafir, chains and shackles and a blazing fire. إِنَّا أَعْتَدْنَا لِلْكَافِرِينَ سَلَاسِلَ وَأَغْلَالًا وَسَعِيرًا. And here what attracted my attention in the beginning is أَعْتَدْنَا, we prepared. Normally, we know that God says be and it is, so there is no need for preparation, so to speak. But of course, remember, the Quran is an address to us, to human beings. And so it speaks to us. God speaks to us through the Quran. And therefore, we need to find out what the word "i'tadna" indicates, just like the whole sentence, the whole passage is an ayah. Every word in it is also a sign. It indicates a meaning and a reality beyond that meaning. So here, as far as we are concerned, this word, as well as the fact that it's used in the past tense, points to certainty. In Arabic, there are various uses of the past tense, and one of them is to emphasize certainty. Although here it's talking about something that's going to happen in the future. And here it points to the certainty of the punishment, the certainty of the suffering that will, for the kafirin, for the ungrateful. And so we understand that there is no doubt about it when we read Inna a'tadna lil kafirin salasila wa aghlalan wa sa'ira. It's also an emphasis that for the disbelievers, for the ungrateful disbelievers, the punishment is unavoidable. It's already prepared for them. It's there. If whoever know that it's there, so if you're going to avoid it, if you don't want to end up there, take your precautions, think about it, reflect about what you are doing right now. You don't want to get into that path because that path leads. It's like we're going on a road and there is a clear sign. This leads to chains and shackles and a blazing fire. Do you still want to go there? And this awe-inspiring day, so the punishment, the suffering will happen on that day, this all-inspiring day, is described in various Quranic passages. For instance, in Surah Al-Ma'arij, Surah 70, ayat 8 from 8 to 14, we are told, on the day, the sky is like molten brass and the mountains like tufts of colored wool. No good friend will ask about his friend, even though they can see each other. On that day, everyone who was lost in sin will wish that he could ransom himself from the punishment of that day by means of his own children, his own spouse, his brother, or his family who sheltered him, or everyone else on earth, so that he could save himself. So that day is a day that is so, it's a dreaded day where people will be willing to give up everything just so they can save themselves. And as we always repeat, in the Quran we find lots of descriptions of that day, the day of judgment, and it's a great mercy, a great rahmah, because it's warning us, like it's a dangerous road. The road is dangerous and it leads to something even more dangerous. So there are signs everywhere. Stop, slow down, be careful, don't go forbidden path, and so that if we miss one or two, we may still get to our senses and get away from that dangerous path. So that's why we find so many descriptions of that day in the Quran. And you can see in this passage how people are so self-absorbed, so concerned about their own well-being, about saving themselves, that they don't even see. Actually, not only they don't see, they are willing to ransom themselves by means of their own children or spouse or brother or family, close family. And we can experience this this state of being, this self-absorption, to a certain degree here in this life, in crisis situations, for instance. When we perceive something, a situation is threatening, some of us are kind and generous and magnanimous and compassionate and selfless, even in the hardest situations. They think about others, they give priority to the needs of others. And some of us, they are preoccupied with themselves and their interests only. And that gives us a clue, an indication about where we fall and what will happen to us in Akhirah. So we can, when we read a description of that day like this in the Quran, it doesn't seem totally alien. We can recognize what's going on. We understand it, although the intensity may be much higher than anything we have experienced in this life so far. So on that dreadful day, those who have not fulfilled their life purpose and therefore have lived an ego-centered lives, not necessarily selfishly, but it's all, there is no higher purpose of life, no higher meaning. It's all about my little world. They will be, on that day, they will be preoccupied with themselves at the detriment of friendship and family bonds, we are told. In Surah Abasa, which is Surah number 80 from...
Sister Yamina, can I just add something here in this verse? It's very interesting that it says, on the day the sky is like molten brass and no good friend will ask about his friend. So everybody's preoccupied. It's a very crisis situation.
Even though they see each other, it's not like, when we don't see people, we may forget. No, they see each other and still they're concerned.
That's also interesting. They see them, but they can't pay attention or even ask about each other. And then what is new to me here, I thought everything in this passage applies to everybody, but actually in the first part, this alarming situation applies to everybody, so you can't even inquire about your friend. But then there's also specific people who are lost in sin, mujrimeen. They're not just unable to notice other people, they're good friends, or interact with them, but they actually want to give them, take my child, take my wife or husband, take my brother, take my family, my friend, just take them so that I can be saved. So there's that kind of ultimate selfishness. Anybody else, I'm willing to give anybody else for me, for my survival. I'm willing to trample on anybody else. And that I didn't think that this didn't apply to everybody. I thought everybody, but actually it's just for those people who are lost in sin. They wish they could ransom themselves through putting their loved ones in the punishment. So that's a kind of ultimately very, very cruel and selfish, for me to be saved, let the other people be be sacrificed. And that's specifically for the mujrimeen. And I like the way in which you bring it to this life too, because everything in the unseen world has a connection to this world, and we can see the clues of it here. So that means in this life, when we find ourselves, it's one thing to be very occupied with something so that you can't notice or reach out to other people, but it's another thing to want to hurt other people or sacrifice their well-being for your own well-being. That is a different level. And would you say that when we find ourselves in those situations, that's a warning that we are going on that path of mujrimeen?
It's a warning. It's time for istighfar and making tawbah and getting back. So it's not necessarily wanting to hurt, but in a situation, for instance, where we find that it's either me or my friend, if I'm willing to lie or manipulate the words or the event so that I make myself right and my friend wrong, for instance, it starts at very subtle levels. But if I carry on that path, that's where it's going to take me. And it's when it's described in its clear, that's what it means, we are told in this text, then it's something that the human ruh, the soul really dislikes. It's very ugly. So when we see the ugliness, then inshallah we make the right choice. We use our free will responsibly and make istighfar and make tawbah. Go back, inshallah, go back to our fitrah, to the way we that has been made beautiful and that has been made lovable to us, that way of being. Inshallah.
Now also, one of the things being mentioned constantly in receiving the Quran study is to see the dimension or the aspect that looks at the Creator in everything. So in this particular passage, the Quran, our Creator is calling us to see the world from a perspective where we are aware of the divine and everything is a sign. So how would we apply it here? I mean, basically what I mean is that in a sense it's very kind of instinctual in us that we know there's something deeply ugly in willing to push somebody so that you can be saved. So that's already given to us from the creational science. If the Quran is also highlighting this, as a quality of the mujrimeen, what does it say about the false beliefs of the mujrimeen? Like, what is it about their understanding of the world, their understanding of their creator, or misunderstanding of their creator, that their ultimate exposition, like they will exposed on the day of judgment. That's the day where we cannot escape anything. SubhanAllah, that's the day everything is transparent. And then when everything becomes transparent, then the mujrimeen are those who reflect this ugliness, that they want to give anything to save themselves. So what does it say about the iman or mistake of belief, the false beliefs about mujrimeen? What is it that takes us to that very selfish space in this world and the next world? What is it about our creator that takes us there? I'm not sure. Is that making sense?
Well, yeah. Rather than what is it about our creator, what is it about our state of being, our mindlessness? That
vis-a-vis our creator. I mean, right?
So yeah. So let's keep this in mind as we are going through the description, inshallah. I want to pause a little bit on or the awesomeness, the awe-inspiring of that day, that dreadful day, and how it is described in the Quran, because I feel that it is an indication. The fact that it is repeated in the Quran so often is because we need it so much, because we seem to forget so often that we have one feet in this world and one in the next, because as I always say, and I say this to myself primarily, death is not only the death one day when I leave this world, bi'idhnillah, but it's also the fact that this world is passing and that we are returning, and everything is returning to God here and now, always. Everything is flowing into the world of Akhirah. So when we live with that consciousness, inshallah, our way of being will start transforming. So we're saying in, thank you, Isra, thank you. In Surah Abasa, Surah 80, in verses 34 to 37, we are told the day, so that day is the day a man or a human being will flee from his brother and his mother and his father and his spouse and his children. On that day, every human being among them will have concerns enough of his own. يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه. So again, it is described in details. Siblings, parents, spouse, and children, like your immediate family, because people will have enough concerns of their own. They will be so busy with their own concerns that they won't be able to tolerate anyone around them. They actually will flee, run away from their close relatives. So in the ayah, the fourth ayah of Surah Al-Insan, we were told, behold, we have prepared for the ungrateful disbelievers chains and shackles and a blazing fire. So what has been prepared for the ungrateful and the disbelievers? Chains, shackles, and blazing fire. And they all indicate the severity of the suffering and the punishment. And fire, as usual, we're used to fire, and it denotes suffering. However, in this instance, we see that chains and shackles are mentioned before the fire. And chains and shackles, when we think chain and shackle, what comes to your mind? Captivity. Which is interesting, since often people rejects to submit, to surrender to God and to worship God in the name of freedom. And we talked about it earlier. I think it was last time was when we were reflecting on Surah Ibrahim, that the alternative to worshiping God is worshiping false gods, false things. So not worshiping anything, not surrendering, not submitting to anything, to any power, is not an option as people seem to think. I'm going to be free. I'm not going to submit to anything. Everyone worships something. Everyone submits to something. Everyone has a deen. Lakum dinukum waliya din. Everyone has values according to which they live. Everyone has beliefs that runs his action, whether consciously and mindfully or unmindfully. And so we saw how freedom and dignity is in worshipping our Rabb, on whom we are totally dependent. Anyways, whether we acknowledge it or not, we are dependent on our Rabb, who has all things under his control. So remember, he was described as al-Wahid al-Qahhar. He's the only one who has control over everything. And this is great news for the believers who surrender to God alone. And the alternative is of not worshiping God is to rely on powerless things that cannot benefit or harm anyone. It's repeated in the Quran again and again. For instance, in Surah Al-Furqan, which is Surah 25, Ayah 55, we are told, and yet instead of God, some people worship things that can neither benefit them nor harm them. Thus, the ungrateful, the disbeliever, does indeed turn his back on his Rabb, on his sustainer. وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ وَلَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَكَانَ الْكَافِرُ عَلَى رَبِّهِ ظَهِيرًا. And it's repeated, this notion of when you are not worshipping God, you are worshipping something that neither harm nor benefits you, is repeated again and again in the Quran to remind us, be careful. What are you doing? Are you aware of what you're doing? Because most of the time we don't intentionally do it, but we know from the results. If we find ourselves in pain and in suffering and in meaninglessness, then it's a clear sign that we are going the wrong path. And so worshipping things that can neither harm nor benefit us, things that have no power to give life or stop death, eventually they result, or they yield, they take to humiliation, to abasement, to loss of freedom in this world, and more so in the hereafter. And that's the greatest suffering. And in Surah Ibrahim, I think we have discussed how our suffering in this life is due mainly, primarily, to our deluded beliefs, our beliefs that are not based on reality, that are not based on observation, on shahada, on facts. Because, and why do we hold on to those beliefs? We never question them, we never, that's how we live mindlessly. And for different reasons that we don't have time to discuss now, maybe. We have some benefits. We think there are some very trivial benefits in living that way. Because we are not yet willing to let go of the worldly, of that, and that means inside, in our inner world, we are not willing to let go of that little I that claims independence from its Rabb, that deluded sense of identity. And so we saw how our suffering in this life is due mainly to our deluded beliefs and the resulting actions. And we talked about inner and outer actions we take, not only our behavior and the way we live, but also inside our thoughts, our inner actions as well, which are like chains. Those are like chains and shackles in this life before the next. So actually we built the chains and shackles ourselves. We chain and shackles ourselves here, and there it becomes too late. We can only undo them by making istighfar and seeing the reality of those delusions and those lies, and surrender to the reality, to the truth, and surrender to God alone and worship God alone and be grateful to Him. And that's why we are resurrected in freedom. If we live in freedom, as the Prophet ﷺ says, you will be resurrected as you live. And so can you imagine on that day when the reality is made clear and people realize that they wasted all their lives on delusions? I mean, here we know deep down, of course, as we are told in the Quran, but we can run away from that reality and avoid seeing it and confronting it. But on that day, there will be no way of running away. And that's why it will be so painful. It will be like fire. We will see the shackles and the chains and the shackles that we ourselves built and put on ourselves. And on that day when everything is clear and we see that reality, can you imagine? You realize that, someone realizes that they lived in vain and they faced that reality that they avoided all along, starting with the reality that this life is transient. That's what the Quran always points us to. That's the first point. We start from there. This life is fani, is transient, is passing, is temporary, and therefore it is not worth investing our life in it. Just for the life, this worldly life, for its sake, is not worth it. This life we were sent here for another purpose, to make it the means to know God, the means to worship God, the means to be grateful for God, the means to get ready for Akhirah. So this life being transient, when we stay in the now and realize that the now is passing, the now is flowing, then we will be more and more convinced that truly this life in itself and for itself is not worth investing our life. That means that everything, our life, our time, our life means our time, day in, day out, our gifts and possessions, whatever is given to us, material or immaterial, our work, everything we can think of, should all be the means to know God and worship Him and be grateful to Him alone. But we often see the attitude of, I'll do my work, then I spare some time to worship God. And that attitude betrays a lack of grasp of God as our Rabb, to whom we depend on here and now. I think that's what Sura was saying in the beginning, like, why are we told all this in this Surah, for instance? To bring our attention to that reality. What are you doing? Are you aware of that day? If there is that day, it means this life is ending. And you say, is it really ending? Well, look around you. Yesterday is not here. Last week is not here. Last month is not here. My childhood is not here. Oh yes, we are on a journey. One day, this will also end. And I like the example that Imam Nursi, rahimahullah, gives about a clock. He said, when you look at a clock on the wall, you don't have to wait a whole hour to know that the clock is working, because if the needles for the seconds is working and the minutes is working, it means the clock is working. So it means the hours will pass, the years will pass, the centuries, everything will pass. And so an indication of this state of being, I'll do my work and I also spare some time to worship God, as if they were two separate things. But like most of my 90%, 80% of my life is about my work, and 20% about God. And of course, we saw that the very understanding of 80%, 20% is, as we are told in a Qudsi hadith, God does not accept it because there is no ikhlas, which is purity and sincerity, and they go together. Because in our approach, the approach of the Quran that we strive to understand and to diffuse, inshallah, in receiving Nur, is the approach that everything 100% for the sake of God, for the sake of Akhirah. There is no 10, even not 50-50. Like, it's not a bargain, 50-50. No, there is a way. That's what the Quran is teaching us, to make everything a means of worshiping God, a means of knowing God and worshiping Him and being grateful to Him. And it needs intention. That's why the sincere intention and the purity of the work go together. That's ikhlas, 100%. Holy, one, is all for God. And God says in that hadith that anything than 100% is not acceptable to God. And we say, like, why not? Like 90% for God. No, you didn't. It means you did not get it. It's an indication of a particular state of being that is disconnected from their Rabb. It is also an indication of our attachment to the worldly gains for themselves. We think that the benefits we are getting we are getting them for the things themselves. We're stuck in the things themselves. We are not aware that they are ayat. We do not interact with them as ayat, as means to know our Rabb. How do we know our Rabb? We are Muslims, therefore we believe in the Quran, therefore it says Allah is our Rabb, therefore He's our Rabb. Yes, but it's telling you, go and confirm it, go and observe it. Otherwise, the heart will never be moved. You will never have made tasdiq, confirmed the reality of the message. And so we remain attached to the worldly life, the worldly gains, the worldly goodness itself, and our gratitude, whether we realize it or not, will go to the things themselves, not to God. And so people can spend their entire lives pursuing those gains that last at most till the grave. At the best we can do is to keep them till we leave the world. And that's why in the Quran we reminded repeatedly about the true nature of worldly life. It's repeated because, as I always say, I'm repeating what's in the Quran, is unless we recognize the transient nature of this worldly life, we will not be able to interact with everything as an ayah, even if we know it as information. So in Surah Al-Hadid, which is Surah...
Yamina, can I just add a footnote here?
Sure.
When you mentioned that it can't be 80%, 20%, not even 50-50, it has to be 100% for God. That shed a light, that statement shed a light to a verse in the Quran that was puzzling to me. And that verse talks about how some mushrikeen, idolaters, say that, you know, part of the animal that they sacrifice is for God, part of it is for their idols, and then it goes on to criticize this attitude. And I used to think, okay, I don't sacrifice animals for idols. How does this apply to me? There must be meaning here for me. And I think what you have just said shed some light into this verse, opened it up a bit more for me, that it's not about necessarily about an animal sacrifice, but we do it in everyday life, that we tend to say that, okay, I have some space in my life for God. He's my creator. I have some space for him, but I also have some other, things that I do for other things than God. I have to do that, and the Quran doesn't accept that kind of partition, because then we didn't get what it means to believe in one God, what it means to believe in our Creator, because we are pretending that there are other sources, and we are. There's a way, as you say, the Quran gives us the key to transform the way in which we relate to the world and as a sign. So it doesn't mean we have to go into a cave, but it also doesn't mean that we soothe ourselves by just devoting a little bit to religious affairs and then the rest is the worldly affairs. I just want to share that it helped me. It immediately brought to mind that other verse about animals.
Thank you. Yeah, mashallah, alhamdulillah. Thank you, Islam. So that was nice, thank you. So in Surah Al-Hadid, Surah 87, Ayah 20, we are told, know that the life of this world is merely a game and a diversion, an ostentation, and a cause of boasting among yourselves and trying to outdo one another in wealth and children, like the plant growth after rain, which delights the cultivators, but then it withers and we see it turning yellow and then it becomes broken stubble. In the hereafter, there is terrible suffering, but also forgiveness from God and his good pleasure. And the life of this world is nothing but the enjoyment of delusion. And this theme, this description of the worldly life is repeated, especially the metaphor of greenery and cultivation that grows yellow and just becomes stubble is also repeated in the Quran. It's a beautiful way to visualize, and also it's a way, something that we live through life all the time, that we can witness and see all the time. So it becomes a reminder, like right now it's spring, everywhere is a very fresh light green, and it is a clear sign of resurrection. This is how God gives life to earth after it has been dead. So it's time for it's a clear ayah, and it's time for reflection and tafakkur, inshallah. So this approach, the approach that, or that state of being, that I'll do my work and I spare some time to worship God, to guarantee paradise, for instance, also betrays a lack of presence to the reality of akhirah here and now, because of the delusion that life seems permanent. When we are not intentionally conscious, aware, mindful that life is passing and it's transient and impermanent, then without realizing, we take it for granted that we arrange and organize our life and live our life as though it were permanent. We don't say it is permanent, but everything in our behavior says that, which is totally contrary to our lived reality. Because there is one sure thing, is that everything and everyone is passing, and no one can avoid death. No one and nothing. كل نفس ذائقة الموت, we are told repeatedly many times in the Quran, in Surah Ali Imran, which is Surah 3, Ayah 187, we are told every soul is bound to taste death. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. But it is only on the day of resurrection that you will be requited in full. Whereupon whoever is kept away from the fire and admitted into the garden, into paradise, will indeed have triumphed, for the life of this world is nothing but an enjoyment of self-delusion. Can you see how everything is related? It's just beautiful. Alhamdulillah. If we just listen to the Quran, it does teach you, us, everything. Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah 21, Ayah 35, we are again told, كل نفس ذائقة الموت وَلَبْلُوَكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً وَإِلَيْنَا تُرْجَعُونَ. Every soul is bound to taste death, and we taste you through the bad and the good by way of trial, and unto us you all return. So if we know, when we are aware, when we have no doubt that we are on a journey of returning to God, not only the day I die, but because the day I die, only that moment will end. If you are 30 years old now, 30 years has already ended. So we are returning to God constantly. So in that, when we are aware of this and we are aware of the destination, then it becomes easier to see that we are tested through the bad and the good. And so we are not stuck into when it's bad, we are totally frustrated and totally, then we don't see our friend, our relative, it's all about us, and everyone can only, we relate to them only to the extent that they are busy with us. And when it's good, we are not grateful to God, we are just happy. And our happiness is always bound to everything else around us, which is never under our control. And so our life becomes a life of roller coaster, and it's a very tiring and very depressing, meaningless life. So, and this is when we remember that we will taste that we are returning to God, then it becomes easy, because we start seeing everything from a different perspective. And in Surah Al-Ankabut, Surah 29, Ayah 57, again we're told every human being, no, not every human being, kullu nafsin. It means not only human beings, but everything. Every soul is bound to taste death, and in the end, unto us you all return. So death is undeniable. It's our undeniable reality. Actually, not only for human beings, but for everything around us. All things, whatever, even the sun and the stars and everything, they all die. Nothing, no one can escape death and transience in general. Like when we say death, there is one death when we totally disappear from this life, but there is also the transience, like our childhood is not here. And it's therefore foolish to live with this awareness is wise, but to live as though we could escape that, as though life was permanent, is totally foolish. In Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Surah 82, Ayah 8, we are told, behold, the death you run away from is bound to overtake you. And then you will be brought back unto him who knows the unseen, that is beyond the reach of a created being's perception, as well as the seen that can be witnessed by a creature's senses or mind, whereupon he will make you truly understand all that you are doing. It means there is death. Remember this, you cannot escape it. There is death, it means right now, this life, everything is impermanent. The moment we stay with in the now and realize that everything is impermanent, you will realize in your heart, first, our relationship with everything is going to change. The more we practice this, it's going to change. Because you cannot hold on to something the same way when you think it's going to be with you forever, when you know that it's something you're meeting on the way, on your path to an ultimate destination. And that's why at the end, there is accountability. We are told, and He will make you truly understand all you were doing. And of course, our doing is a reflection of our thinking and feeling and believing. And however long we may live, since this worldly life ends, since it is temporary, at the end of the day, it is short. However long it is short at the end. And therefore, it is not worth all the efforts lots of people put into it at the expense of akhirah, at the expense of their eternal life. Because there is no escape from death. It will reach us wherever we may be. Second, even if everything goes well as planned, as we plan it, the enjoyment of this life is so short. Let's say it's a life of success. It's still so short. It's a delusion. For the first point, for instance, we are told in Surah An-Nisa, Surah 4, Ayah 78, wherever you may be, death will overtake you. Even though you be in towers raised very high. So there is no escape. And there is no escape is repeated in the Quran in different ways, but I like this one because it says, even if you go and, hide in a very high tower, when it's your ajal, when it's time to leave this world, you will live. You will live because we do not sustain our life. Our sustainer is the sustainer of our life, whether we live on earth or on the moon. And the second point is that even if everything goes very well, everything is as I planned. So let's say I enjoy my life and I'm very happy. At the end, it ends. It's short. And so in Surah Al-Ahzab, Surah 33, Ayah 16, for instance, we are told whether you run away from death or from being killed. It means death naturally, we call it natural death, or being killed, running away will not benefit you. Because however you fare, you are not to enjoy life for more than a little while. So what's the point it doesn't mean do not enjoy your life, but even if you enjoy it, only if you make that enjoyment a means to be grateful to God, to know Him through the blessings that He's bestowing on us, to know Him as the Razzaq, as the bestower, as the Wahhab, and be grateful to Him alone and make it a means to worship Him, then we will have found a way to transform the impermanent into permanence. Otherwise, it's all a delusion. In living for this worldly life in itself and for itself is a delusion. It's a delusion because while we are doing so, we totally leave out something hugely important, which is everything will end. It's like playing a game, like kids, when they play games and they say this is a house and this is, or building a sand castle. It's sand. So what do we understand? It means that we better reflect on the reality of transience, the reality that this life is passing, the reality that of death here and now, and live as worshippers of our Rabb and in surrender to His will before it's too late, as we are warned in the Quran. In Surah An-Naba, for instance, Surah 78, Ayah 40, we are told, truly we have warned you of an imminent suffering on the day when human beings shall clearly see that his hands have sent what his hands have sent ahead. It means his actions, his doings and deeds. And when he who has denied the truth, or the ungrateful, the disbeliever, all would die, I be mere dust. ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا. It will be such, like on that day, the suffering will be so much. I messed up everything. I wasted everything. I wasted that huge potential. I was given the seed to eternal life, and I used it as though it was 60, 70 years potential. When you realize that you were given, let's say you were given a ticket, and the ticket was for $1 billion, and you didn't read it, and you gave it to your child play with it and throw it away. And then they tell you, but that was a ticket for $1 billion. What do you do? What do you do? Will you regret it? I wish I had read it. I wish I had not thrown it away. It would save me all my life, maybe not only me, and the whole family will live on it. I would do so much good work, and we start like, how could I be so foolish? And this is not $1 billion, this is eternal paradise. Can you imagine the suffering on that day? So much that people will say, Ya laytani kuntu turaba. I wish I were mere dust, so I wouldn't feel this grieving and this intense grieving and suffering. We're also told in the Quran, in Surah Al-Zumar, chapter 39, ayah 54 to 60. Turn to your Rabb and surrender yourselves to him before suffering comes upon you. And then you cannot be helped, you will not be helped. Follow the best that has been sent to you from your Rabb before the suffering comes upon you suddenly, when you are not expecting it. Lest anyone should say, woe to me for neglecting what is due to God, and for being one of the scoffers, those who scoff the truth, the reality. Or lest they should say, if only God had guided me, I would have been more conscious of him. Is it true? He is guiding us now. Or lest they should say, when they see the suffering, if only I could have another chance, a second opportunity, so that I could be a muhsin. No, the fact is that my ayat, my signs, came to you. My ayat in the Quran and in the creation. No excuse, came to you, but you denied them, and you were arrogant. It means arrogant. You were not aware of your humility. You were not aware of your total dependence on your Rabb. And you were one of the ungrateful disbelievers. And so on the day of resurrection, you will see those who lied about God with their faces darkened by grief, by disgrace, by shame, by regret. Is not hell the proper abode for the arrogant who are given to false pride? Subhanallah. Beautiful descriptions, beautiful reminders. So far, in this surah, human beings are divided into two groups, the grateful and the ungrateful. And there has been a reference was made to the punishment for the ungrateful, the chains and shackles and blazing fire. And starting from ayah 5, there is mention now of, or description of the rewards offered to the righteous. We will go back to the righteous is just one way of translating, but actually the word is al-abrar. إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ يَشْرَبُونَ مِنْ كَأْسٍ كَانَ مِزَاجُهَا كَافُورًا. Whereas behold, the truly righteous shall drink from a cup flavored with a calyx of sweet-smelling flowers. So al-abrar will drink from a cup flavored with sweet-smelling flowers. So who are al-abrar? Abrar is the plural of bar. And bar is someone who is reverent, righteous, devoted, pious, godly, kind. Originally, bar, the word bar actually also refers to the land in the Quran. It's also not only in the Quran, in daily language. We say al-bahr wal-bar, the sea and the land. It's because originally the word means broadness and expansiveness. It refers to broadness and expansiveness. And so for this reason, vastness, land, and vast lands, as opposed to bodies of water, are also called bar. And this term is also applied to the righteous people. Someone is bar, pur, abrar, people who do good, people who are devoted, who are godly, who are kind, who are righteous, because their good deeds have extensive effects on themselves and on the people around them, on the society as a whole. So the word bar is used in the singular twice in the Quran. One to refer to describe to Yahya alayhi salam, John the Baptist, the son of Zakaria alayhi salam. And once it's used to describe Isa alayhi salam, both of them in Surah Maryam, which is Surah 19. So in Ayah 14, we are told, and he, meaning Yahya, was full of piety. He was barran, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَيْهِ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ جَبَّارًا عَصِيًّا. He was bar towards his parents. He was full of piety, of reverence towards his parents. And for Isa alayhi salam, we are told, وَبَرًّا, he speaks and says, وَبَرًّا بِوَالِدَتِي وَلَمْ يَجْعَلْنِي جَبَّارًا شَقِيًّا. So he says, God has made me devoted and kind and reverent towards my mother. In the plural, abrar, it's used many times in the Quran. For instance, in Surah Al Imran, the third surah of the Quran, Ayah 193, we are told, O our Rabb, behold, we heard a voice. This is a well-known آية ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. We heard O our Rabb, we heard the voice call us onto Iman, believe in your Rabb, and so we came to believe. O our Rabb, forgive us then our sins and efface our bad deeds, and let us die the death of the abrar, of the truly virtuous. So you see that abrar call on to God as their Rabb, Rabbana. And when they hear the call of the prophets, the call of the messengers of God, the call of the Quran, they understand it as a call to Iman, to believe in God as their Rabb. And so they say, oh, our Rabb, forgive us then. So they get to know, they answered the call and they came. So we came to believe. فآمنا. And they came to believe in God as their Rabb, and they asked their Rabb for forgiveness. And they asked him to be among the Abrar. We are also told that in al-Abrar fi na'im, it's repeated in the Quran in Surah Al-Infitar, Surah 82, Ayah 13, and in Surah Al-Mutaffifin, Surah 83, Ayah 18. No, Ayah 22, sorry. We are also told that the record of everyone will be given a record of their life and their action and everything in the hereafter. And the record of the Abrar is set in a very lofty place. The root of, there is no need to go into the grammar. The master of this bar is, the noun is bir, which is reverence, devotion, piety, righteousness, godliness, kindness. And so al-barr or al-abrar are those who practice al-birr. And they practice bir, and bir is a little bit different from khair in Arabic. Khair is also good, and bir is also translated, well, let's say it's not, it's piety, it's righteousness, it's all of them at once. When you say khair, it's a general meaning of goodness. But when you say bir, it's intentional goodness. So if you see what I mean, it's when you say abrar is those who practice goodness intentionally. There is an emphasis on intention. So we are told in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, Ayah 177, what is bir? Because the abrar are those who practice bir. So what is this bir, which is translated as righteousness, piety, devotion, but it's goodness accompanied by intention. It is intentional goodness. So intentional piety, intentional goodness, we are told, I'm reading now the ayah, 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah, is not true piety, true bir, is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west. So it's not only that, you know, the Qibla is like this, you should do this that way. Yes, that is definitely part of it. However, that is there because it is the result of something else that we cannot see. And that's what this ayah describes. So, but piety, al-bir, is to believe in God and the last day and the angels and the book and the messengers. So piety, first, all the pillars of belief of Iman are included, plus the ihsan, which means the practice of this Iman is also required. So piety, true bir, is to believe in God, the last day, the angels, the book, and the messengers, and to spend of your substance out of love for Him, for you. Out of love for God, you spend of your substance for your kin, for orphans, for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask for it, and for the ransom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity, to fulfill the contract with which you have made, and to be firm and patient in pain and adversity, and throughout all periods of severity. Such are the people who have proved themselves true, and it is they who are al-muttaqoon, conscious of God. So it is to practice bir. Bir is, or al-barr, the abrar are those who first fulfill the pillars of Iman, and then the Iman is established, so now it produces the fruits of Ihsan. They practice their Iman. And the first practice is to spend out of love for God, and this will come. This is important because it will come in Ayah 8 of Surah Al-Insan. And at the end, we are told, these are أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون. Those are the true believers. Just to say I believe and then do whatever you want, or 50-50, 50 for me, for my life, 50 for God. No. These are the true believers. They are true. وأولئك هم المتقون. So this, so Abrar are people who know their Rabb and live intentionally as Ibadallah. And they do full justice to their Rabb's obedience, to living, to submitting and surrendering to their Rabb's will. And as you see in this area, bir is often mentioned together with taqwa, with God consciousness. So in order to be ibrar, to be bar as one and plural ibrar, it is necessary to be conscious of God. They go together. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5, Ayah 2, we are told, help one another in furthering righteousness, al-bir, wattaqwa, and God consciousness, and do not help one another in furthering evil and enmity, and remain conscious of God, for behold, God is severe in retribution. وتعاونوا على البر والتقوى ولا تعاونوا على الإثم والعدوان واتقوا الله إن الله شديد العقاب. So you see this recurrent emphasis on, in order for there to be bir, there is consciousness of God. You have to be conscious of God, because as I said, even as a term, bir is intentional goodness. In Surah Al-Mujadila, Surah 58, Ayah 9, we are told, "O you who have believed, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, when you do hold secret confabulations, do not conspire with one another with a view to sinful doings and aggressive conduct and disobedience to the messenger, but rather hold counsel in the cause of righteousness, al-bir wa-taqwa, and God consciousness, and always remain conscious of God, unto whom you shall be gathered. وتناجوا بالبر والتقوى واتقوا الله الذي إليه تحشرون." Subhanallah. In Surah Al Imran, Surah 3, Ayah 92, we are told that as for you, O believers, you will not attain, you will not reach bir, you will not reach true righteousness and piety until you spend on others out of what you cherish yourself. So you see this emphasis on spending. Remember in Surah Al-Baqarah, when the bir was described, right after describing, mentioning the pillars of faith, it says to spend. Al-bir is to spend of your substance out of love for God. And so here in 392, we are told, you will not reach لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون وما تنفقوا من شيء فإن الله به عليم. You will not reach bir, true righteousness, until you spend on others out of what you cherish yourselves. Not out of what I don't need. That's easy. Everyone can do that. That's good, better than wasting. But this is a whole other level here. It means that no one qualifies as bar, plural, ibrar, until they spend of what they cherish. And this is a quality, this quality of spending is also mentioned in 76:8, the 8th ayah of this surah. So here we are told in the 5th ayah, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ يَشْرَبُونَ مِنْ كَأْسٍ كَانَ مِزَاجُهَا كَافُورًا. Whereas behold, the truly righteous shall drink from a cup flavored with a calyx of sweet-smelling flowers. And then the term kafur has various meanings, and that's why you will find various translations. And one of them is, of course, camphor, but in this particular context, it doesn't make quite sense, and many early commentators did not understand it as referring to camphor. One of the meanings of kafur is good smelling. Another meaning is fragrant plant, a plant that has a sweet fragrance. Actually, camphor is called kafur in Arabic because it is white and it has a sharp smell. So this area indicates that this drink.
You mean kefir, Yamina hocam?
Sorry?
You mean kefir, that yogurt drink?
No. Kafur is a small. It has a very strong smell. No, it's something solid.
I see.
Camphor. I think it's called camphor in English as well. It has a very sharp. You put it in the summer around to keep insects away.
Oh, okay. It's not a regular food. Okay.
Yes, it's disinfecting. So here there is this also. You get the good fragrance and also the sterilizing, the disinfecting, purifying. Let's say purifying is better effect, and this whiteness. So this area indicates that this is a purifying drink, and this purifying drink is so fragrant that it is enjoyed both through the senses of taste and smell. So it is purifying, and at the same time, it's not like medicine. It may be good for you, but it tastes bad. No, but it's enjoyable at the same time. It's a ni'mah in its function, and a ni'mah for our senses of smell and taste, mashallah. So something that makes you grateful in many ways. And the next ayah is عَيْنًا يَشْرَبُ بِهَا عِبَادُ اللَّهِ يُفَجِّرُ لَهَا تَفْجِيرًا. So this cup of divine drink, this purifying drink, where does it come from? From a source, a fountain, a spring, Ain, in Arabic it's a spring, whereof God's servants shall drink, making it gush forth abundantly. Which means that this spring, this fountain, is always at their disposal, and it flows wherever they wish, which is also a sign of abundance and availability. The term here, yufajirun, is based on the word tafjir, which is derived from fajara, which means to cause water to flow or to break through like this on a large scale. So, for instance, that's why we say fajr. Why is it fajr? Because the light of the morning breaks the darkness of the night. And an evildoer is called fajr. You say, oh, they are unrelated to each other. It's how you view, it's a matter of perspective. Because the wicked, al-fajr, he's called fajr because he breaks open the curtain of modesty, the curtain of piety. And in this ayah, it refers to the opening of the ground, and this spring gush forth abundantly. So there is an indication to abundance. And the people who are going to drink, the abrar, are also described as ibadullah, the servants of God. And in the following ayat, the deeds and the qualification, let's say, of the righteous, of the abrar, who are described in ayah 6 as ibadullah, the servants, the worshippers of God, are described. And we'll see that they have 5 characteristics, but I can come to. So in ayah 7, we are told they, meaning the abrar, the righteous, fulfill vows and fear a day whose woe will spread far and wide, and they feed with food the poor, the orphan, and the captive, even though they need it and want it themselves, or cherish it themselves. So after this, who are these people who are given this purifying, nice tasting, nice smelling drink that comes from this abundant, gushing forth source that is totally at their disposition? They can يفجرونها. They are the ones who take it wherever they want. It's put at their disposition, it means, and made available to them to use it as they like. These abrar who are ibadullah, they are people who fulfill their vows and fear that day where the suffering will spread far and wide, and they feed with food the poor and the orphan and the captive, even though they need it and want it themselves. So they fulfill vows and fear a day whose woe will spread far and wide, are all in the present tense. And again, here the present tense in indication that this is what they do all the time. It's their routine practice. This is who they are. That's how they live. And when they fulfill their vows, usually it's translated as they fulfill their vows, but there is no there in the original. Yufuna bin nadri. And I think it's better to say they fulfill vows, even if it sounds strange in English, because when we say they, it becomes only, it would imply that they fulfill what they have pledged themselves to do. But here it's more than that. It's open. It could imply that, yes, they fulfill what they promised, their own promises, but also they respect and fulfill what God has made obligatory upon all of us. And their fear of that day is due to their belief, their yaqeen, their certainty in akhirah and in the resurrection. So they live with that knowingness, with that yaqeen, with that certainty. And so they are totally geared towards akhirah. And so it's very easy for them to surrender to God and fulfill God's will. Since they truly believe in the resurrection and they live with that state of being and act accordingly, meaning that their action corroborates and confirms their belief. And that's what ihsan is. They live in the presence of their Rabb. And it could also be understood that they fulfill what they have pledged themselves to do, maybe including nafila, as we saw in Surah Al-Mu'mineen, the true believers, where the nafila was extra good deeds beyond the minimum that is required. Because that's their life, that's who they are. They live for akhirah. They live in the presence of God here and now. And that's the most enjoyable thing that could happen to the human being. I'm not talking about the animalistic part of us, but the true human part of us, the ruh that knows and longs to know God, that longs for eternity, that longs for eternal life here and now and forever. And so the third characteristic of the abrar, of the righteous, is that they feed with food. يطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا. They feed the poor and the orphan and the captive, even though they need it and cherish it themselves. Meaning, they give food at the time of severe self-need, which requires great generosity and total surrender and trust in God. So this is not only feeding someone, as everyone does, but also giving priority to others over oneself. So they practice it here before that day when people will see the close friends and don't want to deal with him because they are busy with themselves, or actually they want to ransom him and even their child or their relatives just to save themselves. This is just the other way around. So it's not going to be suddenly on that day we will know the answer. It's not like I never studied anything, but on the day of the exam, I know all the answers. No, you have to get ready for it. And how do we get ready for that day so that we are not among those mujrimin, those criminals, those people who were the sinners, who are so selfish and so self-centered and so self-absorbed, we have to practice it now. And so these people, they feed others, and they give priority to others before themselves. Just the opposite of what the ungrateful would do. And they feed them at a time when they themselves are in the greatest need. And when they themselves, they love, they cherish what they are giving. It's not like, okay, I'm in need, but I don't need, I don't like it very much, I can give it to you. No, I really, it's my favorite as well. And so they do this in regard with the poor, the orphans, and the captive. That is, their generosity covers a large variety of the needy. Here, the expression على حبه refers to the food, and it means that they give the food which they crave for. They need and crave. And so you can see how here they feed with food the poor, the orphans, the captive, the abrar, and even though they need it and cherish it themselves, is what we mentioned earlier in Ayah 392. You will not attain bir, you will not attain righteousness until you spend on others of what you cherish yourselves. And also, it has been noted in many commentators, and it makes sense, that in this context, the concept of giving food does not include only food, but it also includes every kind of help and care, material and immaterial, because what is food for the stomach, friendship and affection and care and support, is food for the human heart, the human soul, etc. We have many stomachs, many needs, and whatever fulfills a need is food for that need. Also, the term asir, captive, is understood not only literally, which is a prisoner, or figuratively, meaning a captive of circumstances. We can be a captive of some situations which can make us helpless, for instance. And the Prophet says, your debtor is your captive, for instance. So you see, captive is not only the one sitting in a prison. Your debtor is your captive. Be therefore truly kind to your captive. So you say, I don't have captives. I'm sitting at home. But if someone is in debt to you, maybe money-wise, maybe something else. Therefore,
Ibn Arabi, or Tevilat, this tafsir attributed to Ibn Arabi, tafsir Tevilat, there it says that captive can also be a spiritual captive, in the sense that somebody who is captive to the darkness of the ego and tabi'at of nature, seeing nature as if it's on its own. Interesting, and then the sharing food can, in that sense, is sharing spiritual
food, which
joy,
is the
spiritual joy. Yeah.
After
blessings. Yeah.
After the basic foods, of course. So the circumstances, the captive of circumstances, those circumstances are not necessarily material circumstances, like someone being homeless, being thrown out of home, their homes are destroyed or something. That's included. But it could also be spiritually captive, or spiritually, or we can say emotionally sometimes. You know, we become captive of those shackles that we make up, those false beliefs, and we delude ourselves. And we sometimes, there is a time in our journey when we become a little bit aware that something is going on, that there is a pattern that is recurring again and again, but still we find ourselves like pulled into that captivity again and again. And of course, be truly kind and pray for people in that situation. But in the case of emotional and spiritual captivity, you can offer food, but it's up to it's for everyone. You can offer food, but it's up to the person to consume the food. When it is material, it's more likely that people recognize it and benefit from it. When it is immaterial and spiritual, some people will feel the need for it, and some people may even misunderstand what you mean. I'm needy. Subhanallah. But in any case, what the Prophet is saying is be kind. Therefore, be kind to your captive. And so this injunction of kindness towards all who are in need of help, and therefore captive in one sense or another, applies to everyone, believers and non-believers. And it includes also non-human beings, animals dependent on people, for instance. That kindness, this injunction of kindness also applies to them. And so the righteous, they feed and help the needy purely for the face of God. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. So when they feed others, in their heart they say, we feed you only for the face of God alone. We want neither reward nor thanks. So inshallah, next week we will reflect on the meaning of giving purely for the face of God, which is extremely important because it is a putting into practice their belief and surrender and trust in their Rabb. This is how we put in practice our belief in God. And as we practice, then our belief in God is going to be increased بإذن الله. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. نستغفر الله نستغفر الله نستغفر الله العظيم الكريم الرحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ونتوب إليه سبحانه. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Yamina. Alhamdulillah for this beautiful session. Alhamdulillah. Is there anybody at this time wants to chime in with any comment or question? Okay, so if in that case, we will stop here, and inshallah we'll meet next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, everyone.